In the heart of a verdant valley, where the gentle streams sang a lullaby and the wind whispered secrets to the trees, lay the village of Zulu. This village, cradled by the arms of ancient forests, was a place where traditions ruled and the spirits of the ancestors watched over the living. It was here that Abigail, a young woman of unparalleled beauty and grace, was born. Her skin glowed like polished ebony, and her eyes sparkled with the light of 1,000 stars. She was the pride of her family and the desire of many young men in the village. But Abigail's heart belonged to Desmond, a man of humble means but rich in spirit. Desmond was a hunter, known for his skill with the bow and his deep connection with the land. His broad shoulders bore the burdens of a man far beyond his years, and his eyes, dark and intense, reflected the wisdom of the ancestors. From the moment they first met as children, playing by the river that flowed through the village, they knew their fates were intertwined. As they grew older, their bond deepened. Every morning, before the sun kissed the earth, Desmond would leave his modest hut and walk to Abigail's home, where they would meet in secret. They would wander through the forest, sharing stories and dreams, their laughter blending with the melodies of the birds. They spoke of their future together, of the family they would raise and the love they would nurture. They promised to marry and never be apart, a vow sealed with the blessings of the spirits they revered. But Desmond was poor. Though he worked tirelessly, the wealth required to pay Abigail's bride price was far beyond his reach. The traditions of Zulu were strict, and the elders of the village, including Abigail's parents, would never allow her to marry a man who could not afford to take care of her. Abigail's parents, while not wealthy themselves, held their heads high in the village and had great expectations for their daughter. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky blazed with fiery hues, Abigail and Desmond sat by the river, holding hands. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of the water rushing over the rocks filled the silence between them. "Desmond," Abigail began, her voice tinged with sadness, "what will become of us? My parents, they expect so much. How can we ever be together?" Desmond tightened his grip on her hand. "Abigail, my love, I will find a way. The spirits will not forsake us. I will work harder, hunt more, and sell whatever I can. I will gather the bride price, no matter how long it takes. We are meant to be, and nothing will tear us apart." Abigail looked into his eyes, filled with a mixture of hope and despair. She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she feared the forces of tradition and fate were too strong. As the night fell and the stars emerged, they held each other close, their hearts heavy with the weight of the future. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Desmond continued his efforts, but the bride price remained elusive. Meanwhile, in Abigail's home, a shadow loomed. Her younger brother, David, had fallen gravely ill. His once vibrant body had wasted away, leaving him weak and frail. The village healer had tried every remedy known to the ancestors, but nothing seemed to help. The family was desperate. One fateful day, Abigail's parents called her into the hut where David lay. The air inside was thick with the scent of herbs, and the dim light from the small fire cast flickering shadows on the walls. "Abigail," her father began, his voice heavy with worry, "your brother's condition is worsening. The healer has told us of a medicine that can save him, but it is expensive. We do not have the money." Abigail's heart sank as she looked at her brother, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths. She could see the fear in her mother's eyes, the way her hands trembled as she brushed David's hair from his forehead. "But there is a way," her mother continued, her voice trembling. "Benedict has offered to help. He will pay for the medicine, but in return, he asks for your hand in marriage." Abigail's world crumbled around her. Benedict was a man of immense wealth and influence, but he was also much older even than her father. He had been married before, but his wives had either died or left him, and now he sought a young bride to bear him children. The thought of marrying him filled Abigail with dread. "Mother, father, I cannot," Abigail pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. "I love Desmond. He is the one I wish to marry." Her father's expression hardened. "Love does not cure sickness, Abigail. Desmond is a good man, but he cannot provide for you or save your brother. This is the way of our people. You must think of your family." Abigail turned to her mother, hoping for some sign of compassion, but her mother's face was a mask of resolve. "This is not just about us, Abigail," she said softly. "It is about David. If you do not marry Benedict, your brother will die." The words hit Abigail like a blow. She looked at David, her beloved brother, so young and innocent, his life hanging by a thread. How could she let him die when she had the power to save him? But how could she betray Desmond, the man she loved with all her heart? The weight of the decision crushed her, but in the end, she could not turn away from her duty. "I will marry Benedict," she whispered, the words tasting like ash on her tongue. Her parents embraced her, thanking her for her sacrifice, but all Abigail felt was a deep, soul-crushing despair. The marriage would take place soon, and with it, her dreams of a life with Desmond would be shattered. The day of the wedding arrived, and the village of Zulu was alive with celebration. The women adorned Abigail in the finest traditional attire, her body wrapped in vibrant fabrics, her neck and wrists heavy with gold. Her face, though painted with the colors of a bride, reflected none of the joy expected of a woman on her wedding day. The drums beat loudly, echoing through the village as the people gathered to witness the union. Benedict stood tall and proud, dressed in his finest robes, a man who had everything he desired, except for the love of the woman he was about to marry. As Abigail was led to the ceremonial altar, her steps were heavy, her heart weighed down by sorrow. She glanced through the crowd, hoping to catch a glimpse of Desmond, but he was nowhere to be seen. She knew he was hurting, just as she was, and the thought of his pain only deepened her own. The ceremony proceeded as tradition demanded, with the elders chanting blessings and the villagers singing songs of praise. When the time came for Abigail to place her hand in Benedict's, her hand trembled, but she did not hesitate. She had made her choice, for the sake of her brother, and now she must live with it. The night was filled with feasting and dancing, but Abigail remained distant, her mind elsewhere. She moved mechanically through the rituals, every smile forced, every word hollow. When the time came for her to join Benedict in his home, she felt a chill run down her spine. The man she would now call her husband was not the one she had dreamed of, and the life that lay ahead was one she had never wanted. In the quiet darkness of their new home, Benedict approached her. He was kind in his own way, and he spoke gently to her, but Abigail's heart was closed. She performed her duties as a wife, but her thoughts were always with Desmond, the man she truly loved. Each day was a struggle, each night a torment, but she endured, knowing that her brother was alive and well because of her sacrifice. Yet, despite her efforts, the love that had once filled her heart slowly withered, replaced by a numbness that consumed her. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and soon a year had passed since she had become Benedict's wife. It was on a quiet afternoon, when the sun hung lazily in the sky and the village was bathed in golden light, that Benedict fell ill. What began as a mild discomfort in his stomach quickly escalated into something far more sinister. Within days, he was bedridden, his once strong body now weakened and frail. The village healer was summoned, but his remedies had no effect. The illness was a mystery, and it gripped Benedict with a ferocity that none had seen before. His skin grew pale, his eyes hollow, and his stomach swelled as if cursed by some dark force. Abigail cared for him as best she could, but she could not shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The villagers whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with suspicion. The elders, too, began to murmur, their faith in the natural order shaken by the chief's sudden decline. One night, as Abigail sat by Benedict's side, his mother entered the room. Her eyes, sharp and filled with accusation, bore into Abigail's soul. "What have you done to my son?" she hissed, her voice low but dripping with venom. Abigail recoiled, shocked by the accusation. "I have done nothing, mother," she replied, her voice trembling. "I have cared for him as any wife would." But Benedict's mother was not convinced. She had seen her son's health deteriorate rapidly, and in her heart, she believed there was only one explanation: witchcraft. She was convinced that Abigail, in her longing for another man, had bewitched Benedict, cursing him to death so she could be free. The days that followed were filled with tension and fear. The villagers spoke of nothing else, and soon the elders demanded that Abigail take an oath to prove her innocence. It was a dangerous act, for if she lied, the spirits would strike her down. On the appointed day, the entire village gathered at the sacred grove, where the ancestors were said to dwell. The air was thick with anticipation as Abigail was led to the shrine, her heart pounding in her chest. She knelt before the altar, the cool earth beneath her knees, and raised her hands to the sky. "I swear by the spirits of our ancestors," she declared, her voice clear and unwavering, "that I have done no harm to Benedict. I have been faithful, and I have kept my vows as his wife." The silence that followed was deafening. The villagers held their breath, waiting for the spirits to respond. When nothing happened, a murmur spread through the crowd. The elders nodded in approval, satisfied that Abigail had spoken the truth. But Benedict's mother was not appeased. To her, the lack of divine retribution only confirmed that the spirits were on Abigail's side, that she had somehow tricked them. Her anger grew, festering like a wound, and she swore to herself that she would not rest until her son's death was avenged. As the weeks passed, Benedict's condition worsened. His body wasted away, his mind clouded by fever and pain. The once proud and powerful man was now a shadow of his former self, and it was clear to all that his days were numbered. But in his mother's heart, there was no acceptance, only rage. She could not bear the thought of losing her son, especially not to the woman she believed had caused his suffering. In her desperation, she turned to the dark arts, invoking the spirits of the underworld to aid her in her quest for vengeance. Late at night, when the village was asleep, she would slip away to a secluded part of the forest where she had built a shrine to the dark spirits. There, she would offer sacrifices, chanting incantations in a language long forgotten, her voice echoing through the trees like a ghostly wail. She prayed for the power to destroy Abigail, to rid the world of the woman who had taken her son from her. And the spirits, drawn to her hatred, began to answer. They whispered to her in the dead of night, filling her mind with dark thoughts and cruel plans. One night, as Benedict lay on his deathbed, his mother crept into Abigail's room. She found her sleeping, her face peaceful in the moonlight. The sight filled her with fury, and she reached out, her fingers curling like claws, ready to strike. But something stopped her, a whisper from the spirits, urging her to wait. "Not yet," they hissed. "Her suffering has only just begun." And so, Benedict's mother withdrew, her heart burning with the promise of revenge. She would bide her time, and when the moment was right, she would unleash her fury upon Abigail, and the spirits would see justice done. The end came swiftly for Benedict. One night, as the moon hung low in the sky, his breath grew shallow, and his eyes, once sharp and filled with life, dimmed. Abigail sat by his side, holding his hand, feeling the life slip away from him. When he took his last breath, the silence that followed was absolute, as if the entire world had paused to mourn his passing. The village was thrown into mourning. Benedict was a respected leader, and his death left a void that could not easily be filled. But for Abigail, the sorrow was mixed with a strange sense of relief. She was free from the bonds of a loveless marriage, free to return to the life she had once dreamed of with Desmond. But tradition had other plans. According to the customs of Zulu, a widow was required to mourn her husband for 3 months, during which time she was expected to remain in seclusion, wearing black and performing rituals to honor the dead. At the end of this period, it was customary for the widow to marry her deceased husband's brother, ensuring that his lineage would continue. For Abigail, this was a nightmare. The thought of marrying Benedict's younger brother, a man she did not love, filled her with dread. She had already sacrificed so much for her family, and now, just as she had a chance to reclaim her life, she was being forced into another marriage she did not want. She refused, defying the elders and the traditions that had ruled her life for so long. "I will not marry him," she declared, her voice strong and resolute. "I have done my duty. I have mourned my husband, and I will honor his memory, but I will not bind myself to a man I do not love." The village was shocked by her defiance. The elders warned her of the consequences, of the wrath of the spirits and the dishonor she would bring upon her family. But Abigail stood firm, her heart set on returning to Desmond, the man who still held her heart. And so, in the dead of night, she fled the village, leaving behind the life that had caused her so much pain. She ran to Desmond, who had waited for her, despite everything. Together, they planned to start a new life, away from the traditions and expectations that had torn them apart. But fate, it seemed, was not done with them. 2 months into her mourning period, Abigail discovered she was pregnant. The realization brought a mixture of emotions: joy at the thought of bearing Desmond's child, but also fear of what this would mean for their future. She knew that the village would not accept a child born out of wedlock, especially from a woman who had been widowed so recently. The news spread quickly, and soon the entire village was buzzing with gossip. The elders called a council, and Benedict's mother was among the first to speak. "This is proof," she declared, her voice filled with triumph. "This is proof that Abigail was unfaithful to my son. She is carrying another man's child, and that is why my son died. The spirits have revealed the truth." The accusation was serious, and the consequences could be dire. If the village elders found Abigail guilty of infidelity, she could be cast out, or worse, put to death. The villagers, already suspicious of her, were quick to believe the worst. Abigail and Desmond stood before the council, their hearts pounding with fear. They knew that the truth was on their side, but they also knew that the odds were stacked against them. The elders were bound by tradition, and the village was a place where scandal and suspicion could easily turn to violence. The council demanded that Abigail undergo a ritual to prove her innocence. It was a dangerous test, one that could either clear her name or condemn her forever. Abigail agreed, knowing that she had no other choice. On the day of the ritual, the village gathered at the sacred grove. The air was thick with tension as the elders prepared the ritual fire, its flames licking at the sky. Abigail stood at the center, her hands raised to the heavens, her heart filled with both fear and hope. "I call upon the spirits of our ancestors," she declared, her voice strong and clear. "I ask you to judge me, to reveal the truth. If I am guilty, strike me down, but if I am innocent, let the truth be known." The flames roared higher, and the village held its breath. For a moment, it seemed as though nothing would happen, but then the fire flickered and died, leaving only smoke and ash in its wake. The elders looked to the sky, searching for a sign. When none came, they nodded in agreement. "The spirits have spoken," they declared. "Abigail is innocent." The villagers murmured among themselves, some relieved, others still suspicious. But the elders' word was final, and Abigail was free to go. However, Benedict's mother was not satisfied. Her hatred for Abigail burned brighter than ever, and she swore to herself that she would not rest until she had avenged her son's death. As Abigail and Desmond left the grove, they knew that their troubles were far from over. The village might have accepted the ruling of the spirits, but they were still bound by tradition, and the shadow of Benedict's death still hung over them. The days that followed were filled with fear and tension. Benedict's mother grew more desperate with each passing day, convinced that Abigail's child was a curse upon their family. She began to spread rumors, whispering in the ears of the villagers that the child would bring disaster, that the spirits were angry and would punish them all. The village, already uneasy, began to turn against Abigail and Desmond. The elders, too, grew concerned, fearing that the anger of the spirits might indeed be upon them. They called another council, this time to discuss what should be done. Benedict's mother seized the opportunity, demanding that Abigail and her unborn child be cast out of the village. "They are a curse," she declared, her voice filled with venom. "If we allow them to stay, the spirits will destroy us all." The elders, torn between their duty to tradition and their fear of the spirits, debated long into the night. In the end, they decided that Abigail and Desmond must leave the village, for the good of the community. They were given until the next full moon to pack their belongings and leave. Abigail and Desmond were heartbroken, but they knew they had no choice. They gathered their belongings and prepared to leave the only home they had ever known. But as the day of their departure approached, something unexpected happened. On the night before they were to leave, a terrible storm descended upon the village. The wind howled through the trees, and the rain fell in torrents, flooding the streets and homes. The villagers huddled in their huts, terrified of the fury of the storm. As the storm raged on, Benedict's mother was struck by a sudden illness. Her body was racked with pain, and she cried out for help, but no one came. In her final moments, she realized that it was not Abigail or her child who were cursed, but herself. Her hatred and thirst for revenge had brought the wrath of the spirits upon her. When the storm finally passed, the villagers emerged from their homes to find that the sacred grove had been destroyed, its trees uprooted and its shrine reduced to rubble. The elders, seeing this as a sign, declared that the spirits had punished them for their treatment of Abigail and Desmond. In the days that followed, the village was filled with sorrow and regret. The elders, recognizing their mistake, asked Abigail and Desmond to stay. They apologized for their actions and offered to support them and their child. But Abigail and Desmond, though touched by the gesture, knew that they could not stay. The village held too many painful memories, and they needed to find a place where they could start anew, free from the shadows of the past. And so, with heavy hearts, they left Zulu, journeying into the unknown, guided by their love for each other and the hope for a better future. As they walked away from the village, hand in hand, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their love stronger than any curse, any tradition, or any storm. Years later, the story of Abigail and Desmond became a legend in the village of Zulu. Their love, their trials, and their eventual triumph over the forces that sought to tear them apart were remembered by all. The village, having learned from its mistakes, became a place where love was valued above tradition, and where the spirits were honored not out of fear, but out of respect. And somewhere, far from the village, Abigail and Desmond built a new life, one filled with love, peace, and the joy of raising their children. Their story lived on, a testament to the power of love and the strength of the human spirit. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel African Tales by Sunrise for more videos. See you in the next video.